In this video, we're going to discuss my philosophy when it comes to building strength and whether or not age plays a role. But if you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. My name is Eric Moss. I'm a personal trainer, motivational speaker, and a modern-day performing strongman. If you're unfamiliar with what a modern-day performing strongman is, picture the old-time strongmen. Legendary performers like the mighty Adam and Alexander Zass. They would perform real-life feats of strength as part of a live show. I do a similar thing, but with a modern-day twist. Some of the feats of strength I've performed in front of a live audience include things like bending steel bars, breaking chains with my chest, twisting horseshoes, rolling up frying pans, driving nails through wooden boards by hand, and even holding back a high-performance motorcycle while taking off at full throttle. Now, being a modern-day performing strongman and the fact that there's not a whole lot of us around these days to answer people's questions, in an effort to grow my YouTube channel by giving you guys what you want, I started a YouTube series called Ask Eric Moss, where I'd invite you to ask me a question by dropping it in the comments below. And when you do that, I try to create a custom video answering your question. Pretty cool, right? So this question comes from at Lord Sonata 3121. And they said, how do you build strength and does it make a difference how old you are? Thank you for asking that. So my philosophy when it comes to strength isn't necessarily that it's built, you gain access to what's already there. This is what I learned from my strongman mentors as well as various courses I've taken in the past. So, in essence, I start with the end goal in mind, knowing that within your body is a capacity to lift a car off of a human being. This has been documented numerous times throughout history when ordinary people are able to lift, perform superhuman feats of strength and put into life and death situations. These are the stories you hear of, like mothers picking cars up off of kids, that sort of thing. If that power is in them, then it's in you as well. Now, why can't you just walk over across the street and just flip over a car at will? The reason is because we have all sorts of built-in protection mechanisms built within us to prevent us from ripping our tendons off the bone, that sort of thing. So my approach to strength is convincing those governing mechanisms to grant you a bit of more of that strength. And you do that with my preferred method, which is progressive overload. Now, even though my name is synonymous with isometrics and they are a very useful strength building tool, for the most part, for most people, in most situations, I try to use progressive overload because it is the easiest to program. And this is going to get a little, well, I'll get into the geeky part in a little bit. So those protection mechanisms. Think of your body as being a car. Your mind is the engine. Your mind drives the body, right? But the training that we do is what makes it so that the car doesn't twist from the torque. So that you don't get injured when you're trying to do the feats of strength. So training is to build up the chassis so that you don't get wrecked along the way. And you do that with a progressive approach that is actually rather conservative in its nature. When it comes to flipping that crazy switch, I use that on stage. I don't use that in the gym. Yes, I do train hard in the gym, but it's actually with fairly conservative loads that get built up over time. So, and here's where the geeky part comes in. If you imagine, like if you live in a house, you'll find a fuse box. When that fuse box gets overloaded, when the circuit gets overloaded, that fuse box shuts down because it doesn't want to burn down the house. In order to prevent that fuse box from shutting off, you have to prove to your nervous system that what you are doing is in fact safe. And you do that with sub-maximal reps built up over time. So here's the geeky part that I keep mentioning. the way all movement occurs, is your brain sends a command signal through your central nervous system that travels through your spine to tell your motor units to contract your muscle fibers. Those muscle fibers pull on tendon, which pulls on bone, and that is how all movements occur. Along that chain, if there is any kind of weakness in the chain, that's the part that gets shut down. And it shuts down the entire chain by doing so. So the more of those submaximal movements that don't present themselves as a threat that you can get while continuing to build it without it remaining the same, or without it remaining the same too much, too many exposures to the same stimulus, it ceases to adapt. But the more of those submaximal reps that you get over time, the more likely you are to convince your central nervous system that what you are doing is in fact safe. You are convincing those governing mechanisms that what you are doing is in fact safe. Now, let's say you start off with like a fairly light load, right? If this is your limit, right? And you are training here, you get a bunch of reps, and then over time, you build up, you build up, you build up until you surpass your previous maxes without your body even realizing it. So when you get to here, assuming you've gotten enough of the reps in, your central nervous system is like, oh, well, that's not that different than what you've done 1,000 other times. So yeah, I guess it's safe to grant you some of that extra power. And in doing so, you also build up all of the structures safely. Your myelin sheath that encases that neural flow gets built up, so there's less of that leakage. That does it safely. The tendons themselves get stronger, builds it up safely. The muscle fibers themselves get more dense. That's done safely. And that's the key, is proving to your body that what you are doing is safe and that you are ready for it. Injuries happen when your tissues are subjected to things that they are not ready for. And in order to prevent yourself from being injured, which I don't want to be injured when I'm on stage, I have to perform. I'm there to do a job. In order to prevent yourself from getting injured, the key isn't to avoid things that can potentially be injurious. It's to be prepared for things that could potentially be injurious. Now, as for whether or not your age affects it, yes and no. So one of the things, when you are training a lot of reps, when you get the volume, and this is also one of the general rules when it comes to programming, is volume before load. Earn it before you add it. So I'm going to use the late, great Slim the Hammerman Fireman as an example. Prior to him passing away and the strongman world losing a legend, one of the things that Slim had told me is when he was training the sledgehammers, he would lock himself for hours at a time in his dungeon training the hammer feat. And that was after having worked in the quarry for hours, swinging sledgehammers and smashing rocks with it. He had said, you add a washer to the hammer. A washer weighs like nothing, but those washers add up over time. And in doing so, he's not only convincing his mind that he can do it, because it's nothing he hasn't done a million times before, but he's also strengthening his tendons and his muscles in the process. Now, one of the things, if you do this natural, it takes a little bit longer to do it natural, but it also stays with you longer. The strength, once it's built up, when you can maintain it, remains. Up until just like maybe a year or two before he passed away, Slim had this trick that he would do where he would stick out his hand like he wants to shake it. And he's like, please don't hurt an old man. And if you took his hand, you were in trouble, because he would crush it. And it was easy for him because he was so strong. And I remember saying to him, I'm like, Slim, I'm not going to take that hand, because there's nothing good that comes from it. Either I get crushed by an old man, or I crush an old man. Either way, I look like a jerk. So age can affect it. If you start later, it's going to take a bit longer because your adaptive mechanisms aren't going to respond as fast. But if you start when you're young, you can maintain it as you get older. I remember seeing on America's Got Talent, Mike Greenstein in his 90s pulling a car with his teeth. He was able to maintain that strength that he built up when he was younger. Mike Greenstein was the son of the mighty Atom, by the way, someone I cite all the time. And Slim the Hammerman Fireman was the mighty Atom's greatest student who passed on the knowledge to me as well as many of my contemporaries. And I'm trying to pass the knowledge on to you through this YouTube channel as well as through my motivational speeches that I do all across the country. So, as for whether or not age can affect it, yes and no, it really all depends. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this content. I hope that answers your question. If anybody else has any questions for me, drop it in the comments below and I'll try to get back to you with your very own custom video. And if you like this video, let me know by hitting that like button. If you want to see more of this sort of thing or you want to see the chronicles from my various performances across the country, subscribe to the channel. And if you think anybody should see this, please share it with them. This YouTube thing isn't rocket science. Oh, also, if you want to support the channel, well, one of the things is just keep watching my videos. That definitely helps support the channel. But you can also pick up a copy of my book. The Performing Strongman's Experience by Eric Moss, available on Amazon. Ding! And you can also support the channel by purchasing a cup of coffee from the goodforyoucoffeeclub.com. My cousin started that. And if you use the promo code MyPower10, you'll save 10% off of any order that you use that promo code for. That's a company my cousin started, and the coffee is delicious, and it's free of pesticides and mold and all sorts of crap that you might find in a regular cup of coffee, and it tastes really good. But that is it for today. In the meantime, I thank you for watching, and in the meantime, please stay happy, healthy, and strong. Eric Moss, over and out.